They came from the wind itself, a storm of men whose origins seemed carved from the very bones of the earth, sweeping down from the endless steppes where the grass whispered tales of blood and conquest. From the heart of a frozen land, where winters devoured mercy and the horizon stretched forever, the Mongols rode forth with faces weathered by frost, battle, and faith in nothing but their own unrelenting destiny. Behind them the old world trembled, for nothing living could stand before what was coming. They did not march with drums or trumpets. They descended like a silent punishment, an omen made flesh, bringing with them the taste of smoke and the scent of death. From the vast plains of Mongolia they rode, their horses trained to obey the heartbeat of their masters, their bows bending with precision that no wall could defy. They were not conquerors in the ordinary sense of the word, for conquest suggests intent, strategy, and settlement. No, they were erasers of worlds. They came not to possess cities, but to cleanse them of their voices. When the dust of their approach appeared on the horizon, the fate of every city was already sealed. The air would grow heavy, and the markets would fall silent, and people would look to the sky as if it could offer deliverance, though it never would. The Mongols rode with banners of black and crimson, their symbols fluttering like the breath of death itself. They struck before dawn, when even courage was still asleep, and by the time the sun rose, the city would already be bleeding. Nishapur, proud and radiant, was one such city that dared to resist them. It was a place of poets and philosophers, a place where wisdom once flowed through narrow streets, like water through a canal. But wisdom meant nothing to the wrath of the Khan. When a Mongol envoy was slain by the city's governor, Genghis Khan unleashed a retribution that even time hesitates to recall. His army surrounded Nishapur, cutting off every path of escape, and when the final gate fell, what entered was not an army, but a storm that devoured everything in its path. The slaughter did not end with victory, because to the Mongols, victory was not enough. They did not simply kill, they made the act of killing into a warning. The chronicles say that rivers ran red for days. They say that the earth itself refused to drink more blood, that the cries of the dying formed a wind that haunted the fields for generations. When the last sword fell silent, the Mongols ordered the survivors buried alive beneath the weight of their own dead. And when it was over, when the dust settled and the fires dimmed, there was no song left to be sung. Only a silence that stretched beyond the city walls, a silence that marked the death of hope itself. But Nishapur was only the beginning. Baghdad would follow, the heart of civilization, the beating center of an empire that had stood for half a millennium. A city of scholars, astronomers, poets, and saints. A city that had once believed knowledge could protect it from oblivion. But knowledge is powerless against fire. The Mongols came with siege engines built by enslaved engineers from lands already destroyed. They encircled Baghdad like vultures waiting for the last heartbeat to fade. For days the city held on to faith. For days they prayed to be spared. But the sky remained empty, and the only answer that came was the sound of Mongol drums echoing through the night. When the walls finally fell, what entered was the undoing of an entire age. The great libraries that once held the knowledge of the ancient world were torn apart. The books, thousands upon thousands, were thrown into the Tigris River until the waters turned black with ink and red with the blood of those who tried to protect them. The scholars who had once measured the stars were cut down in the streets. The Caliph himself, the symbol of 1,000 years of faith and order, was dragged before the Mongols and trampled beneath the hooves of their horses. And when they were done, when Baghdad was nothing but ash and ruin, the Mongols watched the flames rise into the night as calmly as priests watching a ritual offering. They said nothing, because their silence spoke louder than words. They had created a monument of destruction, a temple of terror that would echo across continents. They knew that terror was stronger than steel. They knew that if they burned enough cities, if they killed enough people, then the mere sound of their name would break armies before they even drew their swords. And so the Mongols made fear into a weapon sharper than any blade. They sent survivors into the world not to tell lies, but to tell the truth of what they had seen. They wanted the tales to spread of rivers choked with corpses, of towers made from skulls, of cities turned into deserts overnight. And the tales spread faster than fire. From the ruins of Samarkand to the gates of Kiev, people whispered the same words, that the horsemen of the east were not men at all, but spirits of vengeance, riders of the apocalypse. To the Mongols this was no cruelty, it was order. Genghis Khan's law was absolute: those who defy, perish. It was, he said, not murder but balance. He believed the eternal blue sky had chosen him to bring that balance to the world, and so his warriors killed not with hatred, but with faith. Faith that the world must be broken before it could be reborn. What the Mongols built was not just an empire. It was a lesson carved into the bones of humanity, a reminder of how quickly civilization can crumble when met with unrelenting will. They changed the very shape of fear itself, and from their ashes the modern world would one day rise. If you wish to see history not through the lens of glory but through the eyes of those who survived it, then stay with us, for the story of the Mongols is far from over. The fire of conquest did not fade with Baghdad's ashes, for the Mongols were not finished with the world. They looked westward now, toward lands that still believed themselves untouchable, toward kingdoms that still clung to the illusion of safety. The storm that had consumed Asia now turned its gaze upon Europe, and the earth itself seemed to shudder at the thought. No army could outrun them, no fortress could outlast them, and no prayer could reach heaven fast enough to stop what was coming. They descended upon Kiev and Rus with a precision so absolute that it felt divine, like fate itself had chosen the moment of destruction. The Russian princes, divided and proud, never truly believed the Mongols would come for them. But disbelief has never been a shield, and when the horsemen appeared, it was already too late. At the Battle of the Kalka River, the Mongols lured the enemy into open ground, surrounding them in silence before turning the field into a grave. For 3 days the earth drank the blood of the fallen, and when it could drink no more, the Mongols built monuments from their bones. They did not fight for gold or vengeance, they fought to make a point. Resistance was not bravery, it was foolishness. When they came for Kiev, there was no pretense of mercy left. The ancient city, once a beacon of the Eastern world, stood tall for centuries, but not for long enough. When the Mongols encircled it, they made no demands, offered no treaties, and gave no warnings. They simply watched the city's defenders from a distance, patient as wolves, until the first gate cracked. Then came the fire. The screams of mothers, the thunder of collapsing roofs, the sobs of priests clutching sacred icons that could not save them, all of it blended into one endless wail that seemed to shake the heavens. The Mongols destroyed Kiev so completely that for generations afterward, travelers who passed through the ruins spoke of hearing voices in the wind, as if the city itself had never stopped mourning. But the Mongols were not driven by cruelty alone. They were guided by a ruthless logic, the idea that terror could prevent war more effectively than treaties ever could. Every city burned was a message to the next, and every survivor who escaped was an unwilling herald of their might. Their enemies began to surrender before the first arrow flew. And in that surrender, the Mongols found victory not through battle, but through fear. Europe, in its ignorance, whispered that these riders were demons, that they were the punishment of God sent to cleanse the sinful. And perhaps in a way that is exactly what they were, a mirror held up to mankind, reflecting back every ounce of its greed, division, and arrogance. For the Mongols conquered not only through war, but through the chaos that already lived in the hearts of men. When Genghis Khan died, the world might have hoped for peace, but his descendants carried his shadow forward. Under Batu Khan, they advanced to the very heart of Europe. They crossed the frozen rivers of Poland and Hungary with armies that moved like ghosts, striking without warning, killing without pause. The cities of Sandomierz, Krakow, and Pest fell one after another, their streets left red and smoking in the snow. At the Battle of Mohi, they shattered the Hungarian army with a maneuver so perfect that it would still be studied by generals centuries later. When the sun rose the next morning, the fields were littered with corpses, and the Mongols vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving nothing but silence behind them. For a time, even the papal courts trembled. Rumors spread that the horsemen of the East would ride all the way to Rome. Kings prayed behind stone walls, and peasants whispered that the end of days had come. But just as suddenly as the Mongols had entered Europe, they withdrew, recalled by the death of their great Khan in the East. The armies turned back, not defeated, but unfinished, as though the world had been granted a brief reprieve by the will of heaven itself. Those who survived never forgot. In their songs, in their legends, in their nightmares, the Mongols remained not as men, but as forces of nature, as storms wearing human faces. And in that fear, their victory endured long after their empire began to fade, because the Mongols understood something eternal. something every empire after them would learn too late, that to rule through terror is to rule through memory, and memory never truly dies. In time, the fires dimmed, and the riders of the steppe faded into history, but the lands they touch still carry their scars. Beneath modern cities, beneath the quiet fields of Central Asia, beneath the rivers that once ran red, lie the bones of a world remade by fire. The Mongols did not just change borders, they changed the very definition of fear. Their empire collapsed as all empires must, but their legend remained vast, unrelenting, and terrible. And even now when we speak their name, something ancient stirs in the silence between words. The memory of hoofbeats, the echo of fire, the reminder that civilization, no matter how strong, can be reduced to dust by the will of a single storm. So remember what the Mongols did to the cities they conquered, and what they left behind when they were done. Remember that power and peace are always temporary, that the line between order and ruin is as thin as the sound of a single horse's breath. And if you wish to uncover more untold stories like this one, stories of power, of cruelty, of the fragile thread that binds history together, then subscribe to the channel and like the video. Because the past still speaks, and through your support,